Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Teresa Harvey, President and CEO of North Orange County Chamber. I'm pleased today to have a panel of speakers to discuss the critical issue for anyone who lives in Orange County: housing. We have allowed time at the end of our program for questions, so please add your questions to the Q&A box so we may have our experts address them. Whether you own or rent, most will agree that housing in Orange County is expensive. In fact, we live in one of the most expensive housing markets in the state and indeed the nation. A diverse housing market is critical for the long-term success of Orange County. Our chamber joins other business organizations throughout the county supporting a range of housing opportunities for residents, whether it's single-family detached home or a high-rise condominium. Residents of our county need choices. If we are going to continue to attract and retain businesses in the region, it is critical that we meet the needs to house those who choose to live, work, and recreate in Orange County. Today, we learn from experts more about the challenges and opportunities for our region as we meet the needs of our residents today and in the future. Our first presenter is Steve LaMotte. Steve serves as the Chapter Executive Officer for the Building Industry Association of Southern California, Orange County Chapter, BIAOC. He recently served as Director of Government Affairs for the same organization. In his role, he works closely with local elected officials and government staff to further the BIA's mission of championing housing as the foundation for a vibrant and sustainable community. Steve also participates in numerous boards, serving as chairman of the South Orange County Economic Coalition, a mouthful there, and represents the private sector on the Orange County Council of Governments. Steve, welcome. I'm looking forward to hearing from you today.
Thank you. And we just call it SOSEC to make it a little bit easier. So
right.
You got to start to get used to all the acronyms.
Acronyms.
All right, well,
take it away.
I'm going to share my screen, and you would think I'm an expert at this, but let's go. All right, can you guys see that? Perfect. Okay, so as Teresa said, BIA Orange County, and what our mission is, we're education, we're networking, and most importantly, in my opinion, we're an advocacy organization for builders, developers, and everyone in between who work in the industry. So this is sort of a roadshow PowerPoint. I do this all over to local chambers. I mean, you name it. We encompass everybody: lawyers, architects, developers, builders. As I said, subs, the trades. We're 100,000. Our organization has 100,000 individuals involved in the industry within the BISC. And about 1,100 companies, and that's just here in Southern California. So we're a very vast group. We focus at the federal level, the state level, the regional level, and there's many other housing associations just like us throughout the country. And I believe we're actually the biggest one in the nation. And as mentioned, we work a lot with elected officials. We testify, we show up to city council a lot. This is not a fake number, but over 50 hearings a year on average. Obviously, that was prior to COVID, but we still call into meetings, and then now city council meetings are actually starting to be back in person. And so actually next week I'll be back in person at a city council meeting, testifying in favor of a project. Again, working with the local elected officials on local policy issues is probably the majority of what we do. On top of the advocacy, we have a political action committee as well, which hopefully again, tries to elect good individuals who are in favor of the industry. So quite important there. Just a little snapshot of myself. And then of course, our government affairs director at the time, Adam Wood, again, attending the numerous meetings that we do. So that was a little bit about us. Again, I like to show this picture. This is Orange County to really try to get perspective. There's still a lot of open space in Orange County. It's very different, obviously, between the north and the south. But it's important to realize that, again, there's a lot of green there. And so I'm going to talk about it a little bit in the presentation, but some of the hurdles that we still have to overcome, of course, is going to be just available land here. So the state of housing, this is kind of my, speed dating, if you will, go through the problems. Population growth and decrease is going in the wrong direction. We have a supply problem. We have high demand. We have high prices. In Orange County, we have dwindling land. We have NIMBYs, which are not in my backyard, which I'll talk about a little bit. The vacancy rate is extremely low. Obviously, some of this stuff is changing a little bit due to COVID, but in Orange County, the vacancy rate is still low. We have a very difficult regulatory climate. We have high fees, which is similar to the regulation. Political landscape is tough. Elected officials do not want to approve new housing units. Traffic is a concern. Parking is a concern. We're aging in place. We're losing millennials. And before COVID, there was a labor shortage in terms of within the building industry, which is still a problem, actually. Again, trying to find the right trades in the numbers we need to build housing as much as we can. So all of this adds to the cost of housing, which again, we'll talk about a little bit here in a second. So Orange County, again, our population is going in the wrong direction. Wallace, a lot of this stuff is actually from Dr. Walrod's research, but our child population is going in the wrong direction. Our 30 to 44-year-old population is going in the wrong direction. Our 65 and older population is growing significantly. Our jobs to housing balance is whack. Again, this is information from OCBC. We have more jobs than we do housing units. We have a shortfall of around 58,000 housing units here in Orange County. Between the years of 2010 and 2018, our population grew by 210,000. We only added about 48,000 units here in Orange County. Most of our growth is from within, meaning we need to build for our families and for our children. We have an extremely low home ownership rate. This information is a little bit before COVID. It's obviously changing quite significantly, but you needed about $162,000 a year to afford the average home in Orange County. The average OC median income was about $86,000. Again, this number is only going up. Median home price in Orange County was $730 at the time. 30% of Orange County could actually afford this. And the median sales price is around $825. Again, as you look at the OC Register articles coming out pretty frequently, right now those numbers are only going up. So what I want to kind of talk about today, I have a lot of slides and I'll try to get through this pretty quickly, but these are, if you really look at the theories on how to solve the housing crisis, right? This is what we want to solve. How do you do that? These are the major theories. It's supply and demand. I think if I had to pick a silver bullet, if you will, it's going to be supply and demand. There was a study out of UCLA that said if you increase the housing stock by 20%, you could ultimately lower the price of a home by 10%. The governor had an initiative a couple years ago. It's still part of his initiative. I don't know how much time he's actually focusing on that right now, but to add 3.5 million units by 2025. That's 500,000 units per year. Think about that in California. We'll talk about it in a second. And then, of course, another big issue, if you're familiar with housing in general, but the regional housing needs assessment. The Southern California region has been assigned 1.3 million units. For the SoCal region, I'll talk about a little bit more later. We have vehicle miles traveled now being applied through the CEQA process, which means they want more. The state wants more density, meaning the further out from jobs that you build, the more mitigation that you'll have to pay. So it de-incentivizes building in the periphery or out in the Inland Empire, where cheaper and more attainable housing is able to be built. And so again, these are sort of the major theories on how to solve the housing crisis. And what I want to do is kind of talk about each one and unfortunately talk about how, again, they will not do it by themselves. It is a much bigger approach. So this was data I took from California State University, Fullerton. The current Orange County housing stock is around 1 million housing units, with the average home, again, around 786,000. And the OC median income around $86,000 per year. My math, and I am no mathematician, that's why I went into politics. If you added 20% more units, which is 216,000 units, and you look at the average OC median income around 786 and lowered that by 10%, or excuse me, the home, and lowered that by 10%, you're still at around $700,000 for the average priced home. And if you look at the, again, income needed, you're maybe around 135,000 per year, which is still higher than the average OC median income. So even if we were able to add 200,000 more units to Orange County, we are still in dire straits. And so for my next slide, and what I'm actually going to do is ask our panelists here. I talked about it a little bit earlier, 500,000 units per year in the state of California. Can anyone say the last time that was done? And I'm going to ask our panelists because I usually ask the crowd. So Laer, Dr. Walrod.
Steve, I'm going with never.
So I have never. Does anyone else have anything different? But you are right. The answer is we have never done that. And so this is a chart from 1955 to 2019. The closest it looked like we got was around 1986, a little over 300,000 units in the state of California. So it's never been done. And then if you look off to the side here, from 2019 compared to 2018, housing units within the state of California are going down. So we're actually going in the wrong direction. And so while it is a very bold hope to do 500,000 units per year, it doesn't seem like we're going to be getting there anytime soon. Let's see here. Okay. So regional housing needs assessment. This is, and I don't get too technical here because I am not a technical person, but I do know this issue slightly. And what it is cities are going to have to start zoning for low-income housing units. And so our SoCal region, like I said, is looking at about 1.3 million units that they will have to zone for. About half of that is going to be a low-income and moderate income out of that 1.3. And if you look, and that's over the next 10-year cycle. If you look at our prior cycles, we were 699,000 and we were 412,000. So the number is vastly, vastly different from our previous cycles. And so the larger focus this cycle is to put more units into Orange County and LA County and less units out in the Inland Empire. There was sort of this little gang up by Riverside and LA to actually push more units into LA and Orange County. And so when this process initially started, Orange County had 107 units that they were going to need to zone for. That number is now 182,000 in just Orange County. Like I said, the Inland Empire saw a decrease. And so the problem with that is denser housing, which is what you would have to do here in Orange County because we are running out of land, is about 3 times more expensive to build. And if you think about that number of low-income housing units that you would actually have to build, it's 29 square miles of low-income housing units. So that's give or take the size of a city that we would ultimately have to add low-income housing for. And then if you think about the units that you would have to build to actually pay for those low-income housing units, you would need about 5 to 6 times more units in that number just to be able to pay for and build the low-income housing units, because again, those generally are subsidized by market rate housing units. So with our lack of attainable land here in Orange County, this is going to be quite difficult. And not only that, what the state is going to start ultimately doing is punish cities for not hitting these numbers. We have heard there could be possibilities of fines in cities. Judges take over your planning department. It's very difficult, I think, to get to this point of such rash, rash regulations from the state, but it is possible because they are cracking down a little bit further. And so let's look at Orange County here. Take a second to look at these numbers. Oops, excuse me. Can I go back? So look at these numbers. 2016, Orange County did about 12,000 units. In 2017, we did about 9,000 units, 9,500. 2018, 8,400. 2019, 9,819. And if you look, and let me try to move my slide here. 2020, I did January to May. We're down about 26% between January and May. So, and if you look at from 2016 to 2019, we were down about 19% overall in residential housing units here in Orange County. So again, we are also going in the wrong direction. And this is kind of just a snapshot from 2018 of units per city. So of course, Irvine, Anaheim, some of our larger producers of housing units. Lake Forest will also be up there, especially with the recently approved Nicosi site. And again, Costa Mesa, this number will ultimately go down due to ballot box zoning measures like Measure Y. And so just again, kind of a quick snapshot. So why are we going in the wrong direction? Regulation and time can add significant cost to the ultimate price of a home. Time alone, 30%, regulation is about 40%. Vehicle miles travel, again, we are going to now be de-incentivizing building out in the periphery, out in the Inland Empire, where it is easier to build attainable housing. As you can imagine here in Orange County, land availability is lacking, so we are having to move to more of an infill type product, of course. And NIMBYs, if you go to any city council meeting where there is a housing development on the docket, probably 99% of the time, you are going to be met with a significant mob of angry individuals trying to block those housing units. It is generally over, again, I'm a little biased here, but emotional arguments. I don't want those housing units near my house. My guess is they think their house is the last one to be built in the city and no more can be built. But again, we are facing significant NIMBY turnout at city council meetings. We are facing recalls of individuals who could be possible, pro-development council members, and we are facing ballot box zoning measures. You're seeing one up in La Habra right now. You're also seeing one in Orange, I believe. Costa Mesa had one, Measure Y. Ballot box zoning is where a city passes a ordinance or the voters approve an ordinance that requires any development project of a certain threshold to go to a vote of the people. And so as a developer, you're looking at a city and you're realizing that not only am I going to have to go through the difficult and very expensive process to develop this project, I will also have to pay for a public election and hope that the individuals in the city either approve the project, of course, and again, hoping they are reading the documentation that you have elected your city council members to do. And labor shortage, again, another significant problem that the housing industry has been facing over the last couple of years since the last recession. So we need to think differently. This is sort of an array of different products, some in LA, some in Orange County, but we are strong proponents of the small lot ordinance, which is a single family development in terms of the definition, but it looks like a townhome. You're seeing that in multiple cities here in Orange County. Gives the younger generation, the millennials, a chance to own that single family development. Of course, they're a little bit denser and a little bit taller, but again, with the way Orange County is moving and the type of style and product that we ultimately are going to have to see, again, we are going to have to think a little bit differently. And lastly, sort of our toolkit of options here. Again, I mentioned several, theories on how to solve the crisis in terms of a top-down approach from what the state is looking at, and again, regionally what we're looking at. But we need to have political willingness. We need to have elected officials that are going to stand up to the mobs and approve housing when it needs to be approved. We're going to have to start looking at commercial and industrial, which is probably even more on the forefront now with COVID and most people working from home, but to try and start rezoning underutilized land for residential units. We're going to have to look at density. We're going to have to start looking at parking reductions. We're going to have to start streamlining the process. If you ask a developer or builder here in Orange County, one of the most important things that a city could do to help move along a project, it's going to be look at your fee schedule, look to reduce or look to delay fees. Like I said, fees can add and government regulations can add a significant amount of money to a project. For example, the city of Santa Ana had an inclusionary zoning policy on the books for about 5 years. It was $15 a square foot. Since that time that it was updated five years ago, thousands of units have been approved, but not one pulled a permit to move forward since they updated that fee. And so probably a month and a half ago, the city, after a couple months, looked to reduce that fee down to $5. And you already have builders in the pipeline pulling permits to build because the fee was just so burdensome that no one could make a pencil, even more so the case now during COVID. And so with that, again, reducing regulations, looking at retail, looking at industrial, looking at commercial as a way to start freeing up land to build here in Orange County. And so COVID has been very interesting. I think we started this process not sure, what was going on in the housing industry at the time. There was a lot of talk about future projects on hold because you just were uncertain. However, there was a strong backlog. A lot of companies went into COVID, went into the shutdown in good position. So we had minimal cancellations, many large deals in the works. And then of course the demand is just shot through the roof. So you're thankfully seeing builders again working and building as much as they possibly can, which is not a lot here in Orange County, but again, the demand is there. And on top of that, when this whole thing started, there was this major push to keep construction essential, which thankfully we were able to do up and down the state to keep construction essential and keep it moving forward. So with that, that is my presentation, hopefully within my allotted time, and I will look for questions at the end of the meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you for really laying the foundation for our conversation today. Orange County Business Council has been at the forefront of policy which promotes housing to highlight the need for workforce housing as an organizational priority. Our next speaker, Wallace Walrod, has been in charge of research for the OCBC since 1997. He has led strategic projects with organizations and companies throughout Southern California. Dr. Walrod is the founding president of the Center for a New California, which plays a key role in shaping the state's economic future by focusing on workforce development, economic development, infrastructure, and emerging trends in corporate social responsibility. Dr. Walrod, thank you for joining us today. He will be joined later in the presentation by OCBC Vice President of Advocacy and Government Relations, Jennifer Ward. Welcome.
Thanks, Teresa. And I get to do the presentation and then I have to leave at 3:30. So Jennifer's here to answer all the tough questions if they should come up. So that's always a great role. Thanks again. I wanted to start out by saying OCBC kind of views workforce housing. It has many definitions, but we view it in a very particular way. It's basically the infrastructure that cities and the region needs to provide in order to house current and future employees at every income category. So as our president and CEO, Lucy Dunn, likes to say, housing is where jobs go to sleep at night. And we know how important, our labor markets and our employment situation is to Orange County's success. And we think that much like, OCTA plans out 25 years for our transportation system, we should plan out in the future for the demand that we know is going to be there, because Orange County is going to continue to be a place of great job growth and economic activity. So as Steve said, we put out a report in 2019. It's the fourth time we put it out. We put it out every 3 or 4 years. At that point, we were about 58,000 units short, and that is going to over 114,000. So basically doubling by 2030. So this next decade is really a crucial time in Orange County for workforce housing. And that's why we study this every so often, just to get a view about what does this look like in terms of the future of Orange County. So we're not the only ones who kind of make those estimates. And in fact, our estimates are either in line with or below what others have said. There was a report by Beacon Economics and Chapman also did a report in the last couple of years that showed we need anywhere from 10,000 to 16,000 units per year just to keep pace with population growth and employment growth, not even to address some of that built up deficit. So we're projected over the next 3 decades to only grow about 4,000 housing units per year based upon general plans and others. So you can see it's a worsening situation. And so what are the impacts? So we've kind of identified 4 key ones. I'll talk a little bit about each of them. So it makes really hard choices for recent graduates, whether to stay. So we've invested all this money in we have one of the best education systems in the state and nation. And then more often than not, we're seeing students and recent graduates, young adults, leave after they graduate to go to other places. And typically what we've seen is that happens in sort of the 25 to 35 age range. And so you think that's where you're trying to think about, where am I going to be the best, what's going to be the best fit for me long term? And increasingly the calculus in Orange County is that a lot of young people are leaving. And so we've lost population for the last decade every year. And most of those have been, millennials, 25 to 35, 25 to 40-year-olds. And what's interesting is that it used to be they would move to the Inland Empire, but the data that we have is showing that they're moving out of state. So it's one thing to have somebody move to Riverside or San Bernardino and commute back into a job in Orange County. It's very difficult, although I guess in the virtual world, it may be a little bit easier. It's very difficult to commute in from another state. So that's a big one. And then there's also those commuters and the burden on Orange County's transportation system and the region's transportation system because of people commuting long distances every day, not being with their families as much as they should be. So that's, the image of Orange County as desirable but unattainable is kind of the message that's out there amongst the key workforce that we want to attract and retain. So that's a big deal. If you look at the employers that have moved out of Orange County in the last 5 years, it's almost all been about housing prices for their workforce. Mitsubishi Motors was one example in Cyprus, but a number of companies have said the primary reason they're leaving Orange County for other places is because of that, the housing situation. So it really is an overall economic competitiveness issue. We pride ourselves in Orange County on having sort of a skilled workforce, a lot of tech companies, and they need, a pipeline of young talent coming through, and that's what's really in danger here. So the statistic that we had that was in our report that I think opened a lot of people's eyes is that when we did the report in 2019, about 33% of the houses, the homeowners, so we're not talking about renters here, just homeowners, 33% were over 65 in 2019. In 10 years, that number grows to between 52 and 55% of housing units in Orange County are owned by 65 plus households. You think about that notion of where jobs go to sleep at night, that means that over 50% of our housing stock, there's no jobs going there to sleep at night. So where do our employees have to live? So that's really, I think, what kind of brings it home. The crux of the issue is we just need to build. It is, like Steve said, a supply and demand situation. We have a lot of demand, especially right now with low interest rates, and we just don't have enough supply, and we haven't built enough supply, and we have this deficit that's accumulated over decades now. And we really need to do something. This is the key decade between now and 2030, that if we don't really solve this, we're not going to see the economic success in the future that Orange County's had in the past and has gotten us to the place where we are right now as sort of that economic engine of Southern California. So with that, I'll stop and turn it back over to you, Teresa. Thank you. Important, very important issue.
So thank you very much, and good luck with your next presentation.
Oh, thanks. Hey, I got to drop off here.
Go.
Thank you very much.
Our final presenter here today is Laer Pearce. Mr. Pearce is one of California's leading public affairs professional who since 1982 has built his career around his mission statement to do important work for important clients. He has a great record of successes as a public affairs specialist throughout the state with 79 wins and only 4 losses, focusing on solutions through strategic communications for the land development and water industries. For his land use clients, he has helped landowners and municipalities weave through California's complex regulations to secure approvals for their projects and to secure approvals for over 400,000 homes and 2 million square feet of commercial development. He also serves as a public affairs consultant on the Government Affairs Committee of the BIA of Southern California. He's going to give us an exemplary illustration of the challenges people have when building housing in Southern California. Welcome, Laer.
Thank you so much, Teresa. It's an honor to be here. Yeah, I've been doing this for about 30 or 40 years, and you'd think it'd be getting easier, but it's continually getting harder. I'm going to show you a project that I'm working on now in La Habra. It's the one that Steve is going to be testifying in favor of on Monday. Thank you, Steve. I hope maybe some of you will too. It's a really terrific project, and I normally present it in terms of just how terrific it is, but I think today I'm going to present it more in terms of how difficult it is to get even a terrific housing project approved. Are we shared now? Are you seeing my screen? There we go.
There we go. All good.
Yeah, a little bit of a glitch there, as usual. So Rancho La Habra has been in the works since 2015, and it's 443 units. We put tens of thousands of man hours into it. And honestly, with us going to City Council on Monday, there's still no guarantees, even though the benefits of this project are valued at over $40 million. The site is the Westridge Golf Club in La Habra. It goes from beach over to Idaho, just a little bit south of Imperial. It's 251 acres. And what you see here is pretty much what you see there. It is not a heavily used piece of land. One of the reasons for that is that golf just isn't very popular anymore. About 7 million golfers have left the game in the last few years. And that's had a devastating effect on golf courses. Westridge Golf Club is a privately owned course, but it's a public course. You can go there and play if you've got $70 in your pocket on a Sunday afternoon. But it is struggling financially. And you can see here, that's a common case throughout Southern California. The last time we had golf courses open in Southern California was in 2008. It's 2.5 golf courses because that's 2 18 holes and 1 9-hole golf course. Since then, there have been no golf courses at all opening anywhere in Southern California, and there have been about 85 that have closed. Nationwide, there have been hundreds upon hundreds of golf courses that have closed, and the reason is always the same. There aren't as many golfers as there used to be, and the expenses are way up. Water costs more, insurance costs more, labor costs more, chemicals cost more, and the owners just can't make the ends meet. The owners of Westridge are La Habra family, and they realized about the time of the drought that that they just couldn't keep it going forward, and they needed to get out financially. So typically, this is what you see go in on a golf course when it closes in Southern California. This is a plan for the Willowwick Golf Course in Garden Grove. Santa Ana is just a conceptual now. They haven't finalized yet, but that's an awful lot of stuff on a piece of property that's only 2/3 the size of Westridge Golf Club. And then this is the resort in Rancho Cucamonga, which was approved and under construction in 18 months with 3,500 units on it. That's typically what happens with the golf course. We are proposing 443 units in a classic low density suburban style development, partially because we started planning it in 2014, not today. The basics of it are that it is 55% open space, including a big park, and 45% residential development, 443 units in 3 single-family detached neighborhoods and 1 multifamily neighborhood. I'll show you really quickly the neighborhoods. These are the single-family detached neighborhoods. There are 266 of them. The smallest one, which is in this product group up here, is 2,370 square feet, and the largest one is 3,017. So these aren't Irvine or Newport Coast style houses, they're La Habra style houses. 4 or 5 bedrooms, 2 or 3 car garages. For my friends at OCBC, this is our workforce housing. We've got 177 units of townhomes along Beach Boulevard. Really nice, 2 car garages, 3 or 4 bedrooms, 1,600 to 2,058 square feet. These are way better than the first house I bought in Orange County in 1980. They are priced from $609,000 and up. The highlight, the city told us we want parks, we want open space, so we gave them parks and open space. This is a 16-acre park. It's currently the 17th and 18th holes of Westridge. We will build it out to the city's specifications, and then we will deed it over to them, and they get all that land for free. Not only that, but the future HOA will pay for the ongoing maintenance and upkeep of the park as part of their association dues, and the city won't have to pay for that. This is where the existing clubhouse is now, and we are converting it into a new community center, expanding it by 30%, converting it completely from a very private clubby kind of facility into a very public community facility with a full banquet kitchen, and the city can generate revenue off of this from events and weddings and things like that. And again, we're building it to the city's specifications, and then we're just giving it to them. The most popular amenity in master plan developments today is trails, and we have them in a big way. We've got 4.2 miles of new public trails in a town that is really hurting for trails. They include fully ADA compliant multi-use trails that upgrade the old golf course trails and go all the way from Idaho to beach with vista points. And I've ridden that on a golf course, and it's just incredible. And then within the park, there are 1.6 miles of DG granite trails. So we have two completely different hiking, walking experiences within those 4.2 miles of trails. And again, we're building it to the city spec, we're giving it to the city for free, and the HOA is going to pay the maintenance of it, not the city. So a pretty incredible package of gifts there. Basically 40 acres of public open space free for everyone to use versus 0 acres of public open space on the golf course that take up to $70 each to use. On the fiscal side, oh, one more. We're also a huge water saver for the city. The golf course currently uses 90 million gallons of drinking water per year to irrigate the fairways and greens. Because of the high efficiency of houses and landscaping nowadays, we'll cut that by 30 million gallons a year. And that'll give the city a cushion in future drought situations where they may be able to avoid triggering higher rates if they go over their set amount of water use because they'll have a 30 million gallon cushion to rely on. For schools, this is not because we're just such wonderful guys. This is how California works. You know, they've managed to route a lot of money to schools. So we have 3 districts serving the property, and all 3 of them have massive availability of classroom space. They're all underpopulated, which means they're underfinanced. So we're going to give them at the outset $3.8 million in school fees. That's a state law based on square footage of residential development that they can use to improve their facilities. They won't have to build new ones because they have more than enough space. They can spend it entirely on improving their facilities. Then, because we give them new students, they get reimbursements from the state, and they get a share of the property tax revenue. That combines up to more than $5 million a year they'll get ongoing just because we're building 443 houses and we're giving them some new students. For the city, the benefit package is $40 million. Most of that is the value of the land and the construction for the parks, trails, and community center, but there's also $1 million for affordable housing, and there's $1.5 million for what's called a development impact fee, which the city can use however they want to. And there's also money for road construction improvements throughout town to mitigate our traffic impacts. In addition to that, they'll get at least $1.2 million a year annually in new tax income because we're jacking up their property tax base with our new homes. And then we're paying $10.5 million just in fees to the city to pull permits and reimburse them for expenses and stuff so that we can build our homes. Meanwhile, they're losing over $1,200 a year on the golf course. To put all that into perspective, don't look at all the numbers on this, there are too many, but this is our project. This is another general plan amendment and zone change, and this is a third general plan amendment and zone change that the city approved recently. We have a total cost added of $90,429 per home to pay for our benefit package. Bonani had $13,155. Fairfield had $7,845. So we committed at the beginning to be a financial partner with the city, and we did that in spades. So this is quite a profitable development for them. For local businesses, we have a huge amount of support in the local chamber because we're basically going to give them 1,600 new customers when the houses get occupied. And typically in the first year alone, after you buy a house, you spend about $12,000 on new service contracts, new furniture, landscaping, that sort of thing. And a lot of that goes to local businesses. Plus, we're going to be generating about 1,400 construction jobs over the life of the project. And in La Habra, over 8% of the population is employed in construction. So I think we'll be giving a lot of local families a paycheck while we're building this project. So the main complaint we get, of course, if you know anybody wants to guess, it's traffic. That's all you hear about nowadays. Well, to hear the opposition speak, it's going to be all gridlock and nightmares. But when it boils right down to it, our traffic generation is equal to about a supermarket. And the difference is everybody converges on a supermarket, but we disseminate our traffic out 3 different exits. We control through gating the amount of cars that can go to any one exit. So like one on Idaho Street, only 80 houses can exit off to Idaho Street. Another group can exit to Imperial, another group can exit to Beach. So we spread ours out all over the place onto streets that are designed to carry a lot of traffic, whereas a supermarket is a conversion point. And you know, you think we were taking away their firstborn, but when you get down to traffic, what are you going to do? You live in a growing region. We're the 2nd largest metropolitan area in the country, and we're growing. And with growth comes traffic. You can't pretend you can build a wall around your city and make it go away, especially in a city like La Habra, which has a lot of drive-through traffic. You get, you know, Whittier to Brea traffic, Hacienda to the 60 traffic, driving through the city, and those areas are growing, and that traffic is going to grow. So what you need to do is approve projects that are right next to major thoroughfares so that you're not getting traffic going through neighborhoods. We're right next to major thoroughfares. We're right next to public transportation on Imperial and Beach. And we have a traffic mitigation program that we're going to spend a lot of money on to implement. So, you know, if you're going to grow smart, right? And grow with the guy who can mitigate your traffic. Well, I guess that gets down to if you're going to grow. And La Habra isn't growing much. If you look at the SCAG figures for Northern Orange County, which is La Habra, Fullerton, Yorba Linda, Brea, Placentia, Buena Park, La Habra is the slowest in population growth at 7%. Brea grew by 27%. It's the lowest in single family home permitting. Since 2000, they only issued 259 permits. And what was Steve talking about? How many? 50,000, 500,000 units, and they issued 259. Number 2, Placentia, the second worst, Placentia, more than doubled that at 646. And in multifamily, we were last at 626. Fullerton is issued 4 times more permits than us, and they're only twice as large in population. So this is a city that needs to grow. And the picture is a picture of La Habra Boulevard. And when I spend time in La Habra, people are always talking about, we have to do something about La Habra Boulevard. It looks so dingy. We've got to upgrade it. We want to look more like, you know, Fullerton or Brea in our downtown. Well, you're not going to do that if you don't grow and you don't generate the money. And we're giving the city an opportunity to grow in a smart way. But it's been a 5-year slog. It's been a fight all the way. The Homeowners Association next door has assessed their members $1,000 each twice and raised $800,000, which they're using very aggressively to misinform the public and promote the NIMBY mindset. And you know what? This isn't unusual. This is what you face in California when you try to build new houses. And it's why Steve says, you know, how are we going to get to 500,000 units if a project with a $40 million benefit package for a small town faces opposition like this? We would appreciate your support on Monday night. If anyone would like to come to City Council, it's a live City Council meeting. That's worth coming to just by itself. When was the last time we had that? So there's my contact information. Thanks for giving me a chance to speak.
Great, thank you, Laer. There's so many points that have been brought up, and we have a couple questions in the Q&A, so I do want to get a chance to address some of those before I get into my anecdotal conversation. So this would be for all of you, and you can determine who's the best person. So with 25% of the workers in Orange County not making living wage, how does this complicate the affordability of Orange County? Jennifer, maybe that's a broad question that you could address from a business council perspective.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. I think, it just underscores the fact that we need a diverse supply of housing. There are, a lot of people have a certain perspective of Orange County, but in reality, there's a lot of different employees, a lot of different businesses making different wages, different types of companies. And I think it just underscores the diversity in our housing stock that needs to match that diversity in our employees and our workforce and our types of businesses. And so I think that, today we talked a lot about sort of that missing middle of the housing supply, but we need supply at all levels. And I think that, to provide for workers who, a lot of which are, as we know, are unemployed right now because of COVID and the impacts it's had on certain sectors. So as the economy recovers, we're gonna need to have it as part of the picture.
I totally agree with you. And there was a couple comments in here about their families needing to relocate outside of Orange County. I know personally from talking with my children that if you are going to rent an apartment locally, you need to show that you're earning 3 times your monthly rent to qualify because of the supply and demand. Steve, as you deal with the multitudes of people on so many levels, how do you see this struggle between wages and housing prices, and how are we going to come to terms with that if the local climate of approving new housing continues to stall?
Yeah, I think Jennifer said it well too. This is a big problem in terms of how much we're making here in Orange County, and then what the average price is to buy the average style home. And so, again, it's a pronged approach. We need to, in my opinion, it simply just comes down to we need to continue to build. And I know Orange County. I've been here my whole life, and that is a scary term for most people because we are still stuck in this everything suburban lifestyle. But I'm sorry, we're ultimately going to have to change and look different. My guess is 50, 60 years ago, when the homes were built that I grew up in and that my parents bought and, my parents' friends bought, that was different from 40 years prior. And then, 40 years after that, it was different. So it's always going to be changing. It's always going to be different. We do have to think of different product style. Denser product, near transit, closer to whether it's the freeways, whether it's to, bus stops, all that kind of stuff, a higher density product. Keep people here, keep the younger generations here, again, to be closer to the job. So, and again, when you're doing, we need all types of product as well, because even when you build the more luxury style product, you're still getting people purchasing those homes and freeing up more homes. Yeah, maybe those homes that they left, maybe those homes that they left are going to be the more affordable homes for the younger generations or the growing families to purchase. So it's a big prong approach, if you will, but I think it comes down to strictly we just need to continue to build.
Laer, I think you had something you wanted to add there.
Yeah, it was the last point that Steve made. Of all the things that I talk to people in La Habra or other towns about, that's the point that resonates. Each new home sale typically generates 3 resales. And that means, one person sells their house to move up to the new home. Somebody sells their house to buy that house that just opened up. Somebody sells their house to buy the other house. That's how the affordability gets unlocked. Homes that have been off the market for decades all of a sudden go on the market again. And the millennials that I talk to don't think about buying one of the houses in Rancho La Habra so much as they think about buying a house that's opened up in town because someone moved out of it. And that dynamic doesn't happen unless you're constantly bringing new inventory into the marketplace.
Great. I have a couple questions and we have about 10 minutes left. So one of the questions is, what do you see the role of auxiliary dwelling units, ADUs, contributing to additional housing? We all know that the state has changed the regulations on that, and it's been adopted by many of the local municipalities. I'm not sure who's best to answer that, so have at it.
I mean, I can start. It's yeah, accessory dwelling units, the ADUs, and depending on where you live, I think there was 3 bills out of the state that made it a lot easier to build them. And depending on where you are in Orange County, meaning the distance from a transit hub, if you will, you can build 1 to 2. Technically, you could go to 2 if your house is big enough and you're close enough to a certain transit area. You could change your garage into 1, and you can also do 1 in the backyard. So you have 2. It's again, I think it'll be helpful. We're talking numbers here in terms of the shortage that are staggering. And on top of that, don't get me wrong, we're definitely in favor of ADUs, but you're not really, to some extent, not required to add additional parking in some areas, again, if you're close to certain transit areas. So it will be tough for local neighborhoods, and I'm sure cities. That's kind of why there's growing pains, obviously, with the ADU issue. But it will help. It's just going to be, we need a lot more.
Great. Another question we had, and I'm going to paraphrase this with some of the questions that I had earlier, and that is, with so many people working virtually, how do we see opportunities to reutilize parking lots for housing? And my question would be, how do you see virtual working really changing where people live and the style of lifestyle for so many of our workers that are now able to work, maybe live not even in Orange County, but still be able to contribute here? Jennifer, was that something that you can address from an OCBC perspective?
Sure, yeah. We've been thinking a lot about the impacts of telework, telehealth, everything on the way people live in the region, move about the region. And I think, it's a double-sided coin in that we are still in the pandemic and we don't know exactly how it's going to play out for sure, in terms of how much people are going to return to their commute. I don't think it will look exactly the same as it did before, but we already are seeing, in the transportation sector, for example, traffic pick back up. And as people are going into their office, maybe not Monday through Friday, but some. Then on the flip side, I think, people working from home is also going to just further create a demand for a diverse housing portfolio, one that can accommodate your kids working, your kids going to school and you having an office. A lot of people who were commuting from Orange County to LA now maybe don't have to do that anymore and can instead buy a house out here instead of having to live in the even more expensive LA area. And so I think that it kind of has multiple, in some ways it's going to drive up demand, in some ways it will decrease demand for certain things. And I think that we just it still doesn't make up for the fact that we have this huge deficit in housing. Regardless of how telelife changes our trends, we still have a big deficit to catch up on.
I
And we certainly want to retain and grow our mid-level skilled workers and encourage people to stay here. I hate to have education as one of Orange County's greatest exports. We have about 1 minute for each of you to give a closing if you would like. Laer, let's start with you.
Sure. Well, this has been a really, really interesting discussion. And it's awfully frustrating when you work so hard to get housing approved and you look at that wall of the housing that we need versus the tiny little amount that we're able to squeeze out after a hard fight. And really what it's going to take is the public changing their ways so that the NIMBYs aren't the dominant voice anymore. People have to speak up for all of the economic and family and social and financial reasons to say, stop bullying us and stop being so selfish and let us make some progress. And until they get marginalized, we're going to continue to have a struggle. So I would encourage people to be active in their communities, to speak out in favor of projects that you would never even think about buying in, just because it's the right thing to do for our society.
Great. Steve, closing comments.
Yeah, thank you. I wish I went first because I was going to say exactly what Laer said, but I think it's coming down to the fact that the NIMBYs, the opposition, they are the ones who are there in force. They are there and they're there in a large manner, and there is very few individuals there in support of housing. Generally speaking, it's someone like myself. The BIA, OCBC is generally there with us as well, and some of the other housing advocates. But we need a bigger YIMBY voice, which is Yes in My Backyard. We have a YIMBY group locally. We need the businesses to be there as well. We need the younger families. I technically am a millennial. We are a growing family. And the generations before us, before me, they actually got to benefit from zone changes, from large scale development throughout Orange County, changing the face of Orange County consistently every single year. And to now sit and say no more is just, it's not fair. It's not logical, in my opinion, especially for the large, I believe the largest, if I'm not mistaken, millennial generation. And so I just hope we can see more business advocates and YIMBYs out there at city council meetings.
Great. Jennifer, a couple closing remarks.
Yes, thank you. And excellent remarks from everyone today. I'm also a millennial, and I want to live here in Orange County. I want my friends to move here and live with me here in Orange County. And I think that this generation does have a lot of opportunity to contribute to the economy and sees a lot of attraction here in Orange County. And if we can provide and meet that attraction with housing, new housing, I think that's great. I live in a community that's very similarly designed as what's being proposed at Rancho La Habra, and I think it's a perfect blend of things that the future generation is going to want to see.
Great. I think that we'll continue to have these discussions as we look at other housing projects in the community. But I thank all of you for being here today. It's just, we all love to live in Orange County, and I know I worked for the housing industry back in the early 80s when there was a boom in the Irvine area, and I'm now glad to see that some housing opportunities are really presenting themselves in this North Orange County region. So as I like to close this program, stay safe, mask up, and let's keep our local communities healthy. Thank you everybody for your participation today, and we'll see you again at another time.
Thank you.
Thank you.